Well, hello again, everyone. I'm here on the corner of South 29 Road and M55 West for another quarantine edition of the TheGroveCast, and I'm honored to be here again today. And I am extremely honored to have Dr. John Bowling, president of Olivet Nazarene University, right here on my left. Dr. Bowling, how are you today?
I'm doing well, and I'm delighted to be with you and those who are joining us today. This will be a good conversation together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's well, these are times I don't know that I've lived through times like this. I know I haven't. Have you ever come close to seeing the situation that our whole world is in right now?
No, in fact, I think that's one of the interesting leadership challenges is there's no handbook. There's no list of, well, this is what we did the last time. There was no last time quite like this. So it calls, I think, for a whole new set of leadership adjustments and maybe characteristics and some things we can talk about today. But most challenges are also embedded in most challenges are opportunities as well. And so I've been hoping that where I am at the university, we can somehow find some new ways to do some things that might, in fact, help us after the crisis is over.
It isn't that the best way to manage crisis or unforeseen calamity that happened. And I'm sure in all the years you've been at the college, you guys have navigated through a lot of things, but being able to come out better, that's the goal.
That's exactly right. And I don't think a person can be in leadership in any organization very long without having some challenges. It's not for the faint of heart, but I think it is through meeting those challenges that help us grow individually, number one, as leaders, but also helps our organizations, because organizations are not static. The environment is always changing. University where I lead today, this is my 29th year as president. It's a completely different school than it was certainly 25 years ago, but even 3 or 4 years ago. And now it's suddenly new. So that can be a positive or a negative, a little bit of both, I suppose. But I think if we accent the positive, we can learn some lessons.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll get to today, but I want to definitely for a little bit just talk about a couple things with you today. Like you're starting ministry. Because obviously God called you to preach long before anything else ever happened. Can you tell us your call to ministry and the steps God took you through during that?
Yeah, happy to do it. And I think that's always kind of an important thing, because who we are is who we were in some ways. Now, we're not bound by that, but it certainly shapes us. Yes. So I had the privilege of growing up in a wonderful Christian home in the Church of the Nazarene in a little town in Ohio. My father was a businessman. There were no clergy in my family history at all. And when I went to college at Olivet as an 18-year-old, I was planning to major in business and go back home and work with my father, who was a newspaper publisher. So about halfway through, though, my college career, I felt a definite call to ministry. And anyone who's had that call knows it's more than a feeling. It's really a sense of ought, and it's a bit overwhelming. So I changed my major partway through from business to religion and graduated Olivet with a bachelor's degree in religion. And then felt like I needed some more preparation. So I stayed on and got a master's degree in theology at the university. And then, really to my surprise, I went on to graduate school. I never saw myself really as a student or an academic per se, but I ended up earning another master's degree and a doctoral degree at Southwestern Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. And that was a great experience. And right after finishing my doctorate, I was invited to join the faculty at Nazarene Bible College in Colorado Springs. And so I moved from the Dallas area up there, taught for a year, and suddenly was invited back to Olivet to join the faculty. So I came back to the university in my late 20s as a faculty member. But I had still had that call to preach and to pastor, and I felt like I needed to do that. So through an interesting set of circumstances, I was invited to become the senior pastor at Dallas First Church of the Nazarene. I had been a staff member there when I was in seminary in Texas. That's how they knew me. So at 30 years of age, I left teaching and began pastoring in Dallas and loved it. immediately just fell in love with it again. While I was there, I did a second doctoral degree at Southern Methodist University in preaching and worship, because that's really where I was living then. So I pastored that church for 4 years, and then was invited to come back to Olivet as the senior pastor of College Church. So I said yes to that, came back, and I pastored that church for 8 years. Kierkegaard, the philosopher, has an interesting observation. He said, life has to be lived forwards, but can only be understood backwards.
Sure thing.
So I look back, and what seemed to be kind of random, a call to preach, and then going on to get doctoral work, and then teaching, and even leaving Olivet as a faculty member. If I hadn't left as a faculty member, I don't think I would have been invited back as senior pastor, because I needed pastoral experience.
Sure.
And probably if I hadn't been the senior pastor for 8 years, I wouldn't necessarily have been on the list to be considered to be president. So it's an interesting journey, and I think everybody has to live their own life. But the scripture says the steps of a good man or a good woman are ordered by the Lord. Amen. So we need to stay close enough to follow him. So I had 1 foot in higher education, both as a student and as a faculty member, and 1 foot in the church when I was invited to join the university as president in the summer of 1991. So since then, there's been lots of ups and downs. And as I said, the university has changed, and I've changed, and students have changed. But I think that keeps life interesting. So I got interested in leadership a few years back because of my work. And I wrote a book called Graceful Leadership, and tried to identify some characteristics of leadership within the kingdom of God. And then a few years later, I wrote a second kind of a follow-up book called Revision, which was all about how to be an effective in the same place over a long period of time. So those have kind of helped inform my thinking along the way. But I love pastoral ministry, and I just want to take a moment and commend you, Pastor, for the way you have stepped up in this crisis and have transitioned the church and your Bible studies and your worship services. And again, there was no handbook how to do that. You just had to figure that out and bring your people with you. So, but that's a wonderful thing, and you've done a good job.
I appreciate that. You're trying to find the resources that are available. You know how that is.
Exactly.
I'm glad you brought up your book Revision. I've been going back to that lately. I love that book. Dr. Wayne Brown gave that to us one Christmas when he was our DS for all the pastors.
Oh, good.
The chapter, I reread a chapter last night on re-engage, because I think on the look inward section, because I thought that sets a tone for what we're doing right now.
Yeah, that's really true. And the whole kind of thesis of the book is that there are moments along the way when you need to kind of renew, almost reinvent. And sometimes we can generate those moments. Other times, like now, they're generated for us. So we don't have much of a choice. We've got to find a way to re-engage, re-articulate our mission, and refresh ourselves in the midst of all of that.
Yes, sir. And so we're doing that. I know how our whole thought process kind of was just thrown into the fire as a church. Kind of take us, if you can, as far as you can, as the college began to look through this. Okay, this is what's going on. We're not allowed to be in large groups. Other universities, you reach out to other university presidents. I know you prayed a lot. You have your team to talk to. Kind of take us through how that happened.
Yeah, and that was very challenging and continues to be. When the virus first appeared, and no one really knew how serious it was. Some experts were predicting pretty serious, but at the same time, I thought, well, I'm not sure it's going to be all that serious. So we came up to spring break when the students left, and the plan was to just come back after spring break and continue. But during spring break, things began to accelerate, and we had to make a decision whether we would have students to come back. So about halfway through that week, I caucused with the leadership team, and we decided, I guess primarily at my urging, we decided to have students come back, and we would just not meet in large groups. So any classes over a certain size, we would break into smaller groups, and we would suspend chapel, which I hated to do, but we couldn't all be together.
Right.
So I made that decision. We communicated it, and immediately we got beat up on social media by moms and dads and others. And I get that now. I didn't quite get it then, about how we weren't caring for students, and students would come back from really all over the country, and some had been out of the country,
Yeah.
and we put them back in close quarters. So I said to our team the very next day after making the decision, I said, every automobile I drive has the reverse gear. And so we're going to have to back this thing up and change,
Yeah.
which, it was the right decision finally, but it took me a little while to get there because I didn't want to close. And one reason I didn't want to is that I just knew intuitively that there were a whole host of issues that went with closing the campus that moms and dads didn't necessarily think about. I mean, not their fault. Others don't think about. But we had to, of course, retool and get ready to deliver online. Fortunately, we were pretty well set for that.
Mm-hmm.
But such things as, do we refund the room and board charges since students aren't here? Well, we built a budget expecting those,
Mm-hmm.
and we still have an obligation to our food service provider.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to end up costing the university probably a little bit more than $2 million just because we've had to change.
Yeah.
Well, I don't care how big your institution is, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we just had to navigate that. And then every day we put together immediately an emergency team and from all across campus. And they have been meeting really every day and helping us process all of that. But, we've kind of found our new level out there. And I think it's going well, but we're not right now this week trying to decide what are we going to do for commencement, graduation. The seniors went on for spring break and suddenly it's over. They don't get to say goodbye to faculty. They don't see their friends. So we're working on that and planning for an event down the road once this clears, when students can come back to campus for a kind of farewell reception hosted by the president. So there are lots of moving parts, but I guess that's job security.
Yeah, not the way you like to have it, but it's definitely security.
That's right.
You bring out points that I don't think people think about, and I think everybody was just really apprehensive and anxious when it all began to go. Even as a church, I think I probably was guilty, like you. Maybe this is just overhyped by the media.
Right. You just don't know.
Yeah, but of course we realize it's not now. Just that one area where you're talking about room and board and the food service, look at how much money you're dealing with in that section,
Right.
And I'm dealing with something big with things in the church, but it's all compartmentalized where you're at, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And I think that's just one of the ongoing challenges. And hopefully, I read somewhere some years back that you should never waste a good crisis, which is to say, all right, can you use this time to perhaps do some things? For example, at the university, this has accelerated our move to online education, which of course is a big factor. Now, we're a residential campus, and I never see us moving totally online, but I think we will be able to offer some online features, even beginning next fall, to our students and to high school students who may want to start their college early. And we're much further along at doing that. So we'll try to capitalize on some good things as we go. And I think I was talking in a meeting this morning about when we come back next fall, that we kind of unveil a new Olivet in the sense of these are some new initiatives, and rather than look at what was lost, look at what we can now do going forward.
Yeah, and that goes into the not wasting the crisis, because I don't think this has caught God off guard. I could be wrong, but I don't think it has.
I think I'm with you on that.
So I think he knows how he's trying to shape all of us during these times, because life is really all about, you get to the position you're at. It's just about a lot of times reacting. You can have your to-do list, but you have no idea what interruptions are going to come.
Exactly. And when you look through the scripture at the history of the people of God, there have been time after time, times of testing. Sure. And I think those are times of perfecting. Those are times of of growth. They're not pleasant necessarily. Being in the wilderness for 40 years wasn't pleasant,
No.
but the nation was ready when they came into the promised land and those kind of things. So the same God who was faithful to them is the God who's going to be faithful to us moving forward.
And I sense that in the churches. I know in our town here, I have talked to my fellow pastors in Cadillac more than we ever have
Right.
for each other. Our church is mobilized more. Do you get a sense that there's a new awakening of the giant, so to speak, of the church right now?
Yes, I do. In fact, I've been really taken, and I don't know why I was surprised at how quickly pastors all across the Olivet region have done what you've done there. And I see their services, I see them connecting. And it's kind of a funny thing with social distancing. It has brought us together in a different way, not physically,
Right.
but there is a kind of, okay, we're in this together, we're going to make this work. And I think there is one of the benefits I think that comes out of any time of testing is this move to collaboration. You talked earlier about talking to other college presidents, and the Nazarene College presidents, we're a pretty close group, so we're all talking with each other. Our business managers during the crisis have been meeting every week to talk about certain issues. So we can learn from each other, we can encourage each other, we can support each other. So I think collaboration is a nice feature. And as you said, even other churches in our towns are going through some of the similar things.
We're going to do a Good Friday Zoom service. We're starting to fix that. All the churches in the Cadillac Ministerial Association that are in it, we're going to do a kind of a play, but we're all going to be hooked up to Zoom and have it videoed and then sent out on all of our church platforms for Good Friday.
Yeah,
We'd be doing that normally if it wasn't for what's going on.
right, right. And I think that's a good message to send to the community at large.
Yeah.
With different faith traditions, but we are all in the family of God, and our confidence has not been eroded.
Absolutely. And the church, and we're all the church, all the blood-bought, born-again believers of Jesus. We're all just mobilizing and doing our best to continue to do what we're supposed to do.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see the mug I'm drinking from today? I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, I love that. That was right on. Very, very good.
Product placement is all. I was going to wear my Olivet sweatshirt and I forgot to put that on today, so I apologize.
Not a problem. Yeah.
So you talked already about how Olivet, a new Olivet or a different Olivet to come through this. Was my next thought. How do you feel when we can go back to whatever normal is? I don't think we'll ever be normal again after this. You envision a different kind of an Olivet. Anything you can tell us about that ahead of time, or is that something you'll unveil later?
Well, I think it is an emerging vision, but some years ago, I was elected general superintendent for the Church of the Nazarene, and was really kind of wrestling with what to do, and finally decided I would not do that and would stay at Olivet. And coming back from that General Assembly, I got to thinking about, if I had said yes, what would the new president at Olivet be thinking today, whoever that was going to be? And I decided that person would be asking, all right, what's the state of the university? What are our greatest needs? What are our greatest opportunities? What do students need, and all of that? So I remember coming back to campus and announcing to our faculty and staff that I had decided to be the new president of Olivet, even though I'd been president for 15 or 20 years. And I think we need those moments of renewal. So in some ways, the new Olivet will have the same mission, the same some learning model, and I'm hoping to kind of set a tone that we can move forward in some fresh ways, and just even provide, I guess maybe we might say, a kind of new starting line for the university. Institutions, churches, schools have a way of kind of developing in chapters, so to speak. Sure. Sometimes that happens with a new pastor who comes, or a relocation of a church. All of those things give you a chance to start over. So that's what I'm thinking about. And we've had a saying around here for some time that you don't have to be sick to get better. Good. In other words, we can get better without saying what we did in the past was wrong. it's not wrong. It's just different. And so I'm kind of looking forward, but I'll keep you in the loop as we develop that.
That's encouraging, and I've always admired you. I want you to know that, and prayed for you so much since I've been on this district for sure. I can remember though, I was watching online. That was a while ago. I was recovering from surgery and saw you go up there, and I'm like, I'm thankful as a church because you would have been a fantastic general superintendent. But I also hurt for Olivet because I know how much you loved Olivet, and I wasn't surprised to see you decline and come back. And that was my next question. I definitely wanted to ask you, how much do you love Olivet? I think it's obvious how much.
Yeah, and that was kind of a defining moment in some ways when I had to make that decision. And for me, it was a little bit of an Abraham Isaac moment. So I think God was saying to me, I know you love your child, Olivet in this case, but would you be willing to give that up if I asked you to do something else? And I had to kind of work through that. And so I finally said, yes, I would. In fact, you might recall, I initially said, yes, I would take the job. And I expected to get a kind of sense of confirmation or peace after that, but I never quite did. And as I look back on it, I think the Lord was testing in a good way to make sure my priorities were to follow him and not to just do maybe what I was used to doing or what I wanted to do and all of that. But yeah, I've given my life now to all of that. I was an undergraduate student, a graduate student, taught on the faculty, was pastor of the church, 30 years as president. But I said to our team, faculty and staff, not too long ago, I said, let me remind you that Olivet doesn't belong to me. There were presidents before me. There'll be good presidents following me. I've just been the steward. I've had the treasure in my hands for these years, and it will pass it on. So Olivet doesn't belong to me, but I belong to Olivet. And I think that's the way to think about it. The church, we pastors, when we're pastoring a church, it's not our church. It's really his church. And there's a great group of lay folks that are going to be there when our time changes. But there is a place for leadership, and there's a place for us to own it in the best sense of that. So yeah, Olivet is, I think I would bleed purple and gold, which are our school colors.
I would be surprised if you did. I would be, in matter of fact, I'd be disappointed if you did. That leads us to the next obvious direction. Next year, you're going to retire.
Yes, at the end of next year, and I will have completed 30 years as president. And it's funny because I haven't really been looking forward to that or planning. Some folks know today the date they're going to retire down the road. And I think that's fine, but I haven't thought about it that way.
Right.
So it's going to be really a wholesale change for me and my wife, Jill, because we will kind of deconstruct our life as we know it now. If I was living in this community and was a bank president, for example, and I retired, the only change would be I wouldn't have to go to work.
Right.
I'd have the same house and the same friends and the same church and all of that. But I don't think it will be good for the school, and probably not good for me, to stay in this relatively small town when a new president comes. I don't want to be in every restaurant and somebody's saying, well, what do you think he's doing or she's doing? Yeah. So our plan is to relocate.
Okay.
And so in a way, that's an ending, and there's a little bit of loss and grief. In fact, Jill and I were at a men's basketball game probably a month or so ago before spring break. And after the game, we got in the car and she said to me, I just can't believe all this is going to be over. And, but that's life, and it does end, but every ending also has a new beginning.
Right.
So we're now thinking, okay, we get to restart our life together.
Right.
So we don't fully know what we're going to do. The conventional wisdom is that a person should retire to something as well as from something. But my whole life has been the university, so I don't really have something out there. But I'm kind of hoping I'll have a pastoral friend in some beautiful part of Michigan that would need an associate pastor or something like that.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to ask you that. I'll start building your office. Leave your demands and amenities, and it is yours.
Oh, that would be quite a team, I'll tell you.
I would be honored. I would be honored for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. I would as well. So I don't know. I'm sure I need to take a break. I've really been in a high visibility senior leadership role for, well, I guess 40 years or more, because the churches I pastored were large and kind of high visibility pulpits. So I need a little time to just let my spirit catch up with me. And but Jill and I have a great relationship. I'm thankful for that, and we're now kind of starting to look forward to it. But Brian, I said to someone the other day when all this crisis unfolded, I should have left 2 years ago. So,
Yeah.
but at the other side of that is, well, maybe the best thing, hopefully, for the university is to have a seasoned administrative team
Yeah.
to tackle this. And if we can get all the way through this crisis and get it ready for the next person, well, that might be part of the legacy.
Well, again, we all know that the Lord knows what he's doing, and so nothing's
Right.
chance, is it?
That's right.
And he's got you. And anybody, Dr. Bowling, I know that ever retires always ends up almost as busy, if not busier, than they were when they were working.
People have told me that. And so I think that'll probably happen for me as well. And I'm assuming, hoping it's a different kind of busy, but you're still busy and productive. You know, you never really leave a call to ministry,
No,
even if vocationally it changes.
I think you'll be highest on the list of everybody's fill-in and guest speaker list, and you got an open invitation to come here and speak.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I would enjoy that. I love the church,
Yeah.
and that's really where ministry takes place. I mean, we do a lot of wonderful things in the university campus, but it really flows right from that local church where lives are impacted, and even in these days, in some ways, it gives us some new opportunities to talk about what's really important in life. And sometimes we've put our trust in our jobs or our savings accounts or our retirement or something else. And what happens when those are threatened?
Absolutely. Our security, our trust has got to be in the Lord. And that sounds good when the sun's shining.
Exactly.
When the rough waters hit, it has to be put to the test for sure.
Right.
So in thinking there, you still got another academic year ahead of you. So it's not over by any chance. But what is the funniest, the craziest Olivet moment you can remember? I know that's putting you on the spot, but your favorite, funniest Olivet moment through these years?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. And it always is students. Students are so creative, and I think they're funnier than they even know that they are. But you know, we just had April 1st 2 days ago, and a few years ago, when April 1st rolled around, I got this crazy idea, and I have a friend who runs the Chrysler dealership here in town. He's an Olivet graduate, and he had just taken possession of a new Dodge Viper, that really hot sports car, bright red. So I called him and I said, "Hey, I'd like to borrow that car for a day and put my license plates on it." And so I took it over to the dealership. They switched the plates out, and then I came to work that morning, April 1st, in that red Viper and put it in my parking place out here. And then we put a camera on it so we could broadcast. And I put on the seat, had the top down. It was a beautiful sunny day. On the seat, I put a little sign that said, "Gotcha." And so we would watch people coming out of the parking lot, walking past my parking place and seeing that car and checking the license plates. And then they would walk up and they'd look in and see that sign, "Gotcha." And then they'd suddenly look around to see if anybody saw them and all of that. So that kind of came to mind. There've been a lot of other kind of funny moments along the way, but students are generally the source of those.
Absolutely. And if I ask you what you're going to miss the most, I'm sure you're going to say the students, because I know you're like the Pied Piper. I've seen you walk through campus and there's just a swarm of students around talking. You're right there in the midst of student life.
Yeah, thanks. And that is the best part. And it's really why we exist, to intersect those students at a critical time in their life. They're making that last journey from late adolescence to adulthood, and to be able to have an impact there. And then because I've done this for so long, I have the privilege of seeing those students 10 years later or 15 years later, or now 25 years later. Some of those early graduates, their kids are now students here. So you see the long fruit of labor. And that's true in local churches as well. Pastors intersect families at crucial points. And then years later, that influence. I remember every pastor I had growing up because of the influence that they've had. So our work is important for today, but it has a long ripple.
Hmm. I remember reading in your book, you were talking about the time when you were in the marching band, when the marching band came back,
Yeah.
and you were in the middle, and they asked, has anybody seen our president, Dr. Bowling? And you had your trombone, and you were in, nobody knew it was you in there. I thought that was funny. I enjoyed reading that. Then you stepped out from the band looking at the crowd. That was good. You're not, you take your position lightly, but you don't take yourself. You take your position serious, but you don't take yourself serious.
Yeah. And I think that is important. And it's, I'm sure there's a fine line there.
Sure.
Students don't want me to be an 18-year-old
No,
trying to be an 18-year-old.
no.
But they don't want me to be aloof either. And I don't want to be. In fact, I knew a college president years ago who, very interestingly, being around students made him nervous. And he never had students who worked in his office, for example. And if he was going to a student event, he always wanted somebody to go with him and all of that. And he also was suspicious of faculty. He said to me, faculty are those who think otherwise. And I said to Jill, after I talked to that guy, I said, you know, he's a very capable person and doing probably a good job, but I think he's in the wrong job. Because if you don't love students and you don't respect your faculty, it's not going to go well. So yeah, the student part is the best part. So I do try to be involved. I've taken roles in some of the school productions, and like you said, I hid out in the band that first football game way back there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I just like going over and sitting down and having a meal with students as well. And Jill says to me from time to time, remember, you can't fool the kids, she says,
Great.
which I think is really true. Now, students don't understand all the dynamics and nuances of running a college, but they know if you're straight with them, and they know if you do care about them.
Yes,
and if that's in place, then you've got the framework for a relationship.
Well, I think you view yourself, because you're a pastor at heart. You're the pastor of Olivet. And that obviously goes with all the decision making and all the traveling and all the extensive things that come along with that I don't even have a clue, probably half of what you deal with. But that's the pastor's heart that you show when you're amongst the students and treating the faculty as a team.
Yeah, I do think that's probably part of, and particularly since I was pastor even here for 8 years, and that had never happened before. We never elected the college church pastor as president, but it kind of set a relationship. And again, I think I'm called into ministry. This happens to be the job assignment, but the calling is still the same. And so that's I think is important. Let me say one other thing, and I'm thinking about my work, and I'll try to say it quickly. When I first became president, I realized in many ways I was standing in the middle of a circle, and I was the only one in the middle. But around me were the various stakeholders of the university. For example, at one point on the circle, you have students, and they have needs and they have expectations for college, and they think sometimes that school never started until they showed up, and all of that. So you're relating as a president to students, but on another part of the circle are parents. And parents and students don't always see it eye to eye. And parents have expectations for what we will do and how we'll respond to their students. And so I'm talking to both of those groups when suddenly I realize we have faculty and they have a stake in it, and staff and board of trustees and alumni and accrediting associations and donors and pastors. And I'm suddenly have this whole circle around me, and everybody's talking at the same time. And everybody has a legitimate voice. I mean, pastors have an expectation, and we need to hear that, and parents do in the accrediting group. So what happened was early on, I realized that my job was not to try to get everybody corralled around to the same place on the circle, because that's not going to happen. My job as the one in the middle was to say to everybody who has a stake in the university, let's join hands. Let's become a unified circle rather than everybody with their own voice. Let's listen to everybody, and faculty have in mind how students view it, and have in mind the expectations of the church, and have in mind what moms and dads want. And moms and dads, you know, give us patience when we're working with students and all of that. And I think that's really helped. It certainly helped me survive along the way, but I think it's a way of unifying an organization.
Well, that's the way to do it, because you have to realize that you've got the right perspective, obviously, and there are a lot of voices. However, you can't please them all, but you can sure listen. And
That's right. Listening is very underrated as a leadership trait. It really is. Leaders have a way of wanting to be the answer person, and we have to do that. But listening is a big part.
well, and the old saying, you have two ears and one mouth. So you should listen
That's right.
as much as you talk. I have an
Yeah.
issue with that sometimes, but the more I put that to practice, the better things go for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you this. I've been here at Cherry Grove going on 8 years, 8 years this December. And
Right.
the first time we were able to come to Olivet for Celebrate Life, there is a definite sense of the Holy Spirit's presence on campus. God has his hand on things there. And now every time we get to come back, I was just there for NT Wright last year. And,
Oh yes. Yeah.
for different Celebrate, we're bummed that Celebrate Life can't happen this year, but we understand for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
To the point, my daughter Reagan is in 8th grade and has already decided Olivet's where she wants to go, and she wants to play volleyball. And
Great.
loves volleyball. She's a volleyball addict and
Nice.
wants to be a teacher. So,
Good.
5 years from now, I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll be down there with her unless something changes. But
Yeah.
there's a definite. I love that.
Yeah.
Just being in that campus, and your leadership obviously has brought them right where they need to be. And the next person coming in has got some big shoes to fill, but the way will be prepared for them for sure.
That's my goal. That's right. And John Wesley had a saying in one of his diary entries: "The God who took care of the universe before I was born will surely care for it when I'm gone. My job is to improve the present moment." So there's a sense, the God who took care of the university before I showed up will care for it. My job is to improve the present moment. So I do want to kind of get through this crisis time, get a kind of new energy going, and let the next person step in and take it to the next level.
Sure thing. And I love how you're handling this, because I'm sure you're documenting and putting things together, and it will be a different, even stronger university when this is.
I hope so. And I believe that it is true. I don't know exactly what all that means yet, but I think we'll come out stronger and better. And it pulls the team together. It's interesting. Morale in some ways is kind of went up because we had to meet this challenge. It's counterintuitive, but I think it happened.
You can sense that, can't you? I think,
Yeah.
again, not wasting a good crisis, the way they
Yeah.
say, but finding a way to let's get together and work through this time, and it'll happen. And that's always what I've been asking people as we've been doing these. We're putting a lot of the podcasts together because we're all kind of inside right now. And I'm asking all the leaders I'm talking to, how is this going to make you a better ministry when it's all said and done? And every one of them are saying the same thing. We actually are more energized right now, and we're going to be better coming out of this.
Right.
For sure. Dr. Bowling, I am extremely honored that you would take time to sit down with me today and share. It's my honor. I'll remember this for always. I thank you for this, and hopefully before it's all said and done, I'll get to see you in person one more time.
Yeah, I hope so. And again, I commend you for the good work happening there at Cherry Grove, and I love the new building that you guys were in, and just all of the energy. And I think there's still good days ahead for you.
Yes, sir. That's our prayer for sure. Thank you for that. All of our guests that come on the podcast get this lovely GroveCast pin. Although I can't quite get it across the screen over there to you. So I will send you and there you go. I will send you and Miss Jill a set of these, because I know you just can't wait to get your hands on them.
I'd love it. It'll be a nice reminder. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So thank you. And remember, everybody, grovecast2@gmail.com. The number 2, grovecast2@gmail.com is the email for the podcast. Send us your prayer requests, your ideas, suggestions, whatever, anything to do with that. You want to just reach out and tell us that you're praying for us. We appreciate that. So drop us a line there. I keep telling Dr. Bowling, they keep sending in requests for me to do audio only. I don't know why, but I guess.
We had a fellow at the university some years ago who did our broadcasts on radio, and I kept saying to him, "You have a face built for radio." That's not your case, though.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I had a teacher in high school who used to tell us all to breathe through our nose when we got too loud. In other words, he was telling us to quit talking, but it was a nice way to say it. So you're always eloquent with words. Hey, by the way, I have several of your books, and like I was talking about, you mentioned a revision. I have it right here, referring to it. any new writings on the horizon before we close?
Yeah, in fact, I just have a new book that just came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I didn't think to have one right here at the desk. It's called Windows and Mirrors,
Okay.
and it's an exploration of the parables of Jesus.
Ooh.
Windows and mirrors. Windows help us see beyond ourselves. So Jesus would say to his followers, "The kingdom of God is like," and then he would tell a story, and the story became a window for them to see the kingdom of God. But a parable is also a mirror, in that I think when you read the Good Samaritan story, the question is, where do you see yourself?
Sure.
Are you too preoccupied to help that person that's in need? Are you overcome by a certain prejudice or whatever it is? Or are you the person who will stop and help someone else? So Windows and Mirrors, the book is just out. It's available through the Foundry. It's on Amazon and through the university as well. Every dollar that I've ever made through books goes to scholarships for Olivet, and I'm glad to be able to do that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. As soon as we click off here, I'm going to jump on and get a copy of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
See, you're a good salesman as well. You sold a book here.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. I love you, sir, and I thank you for being with us today. And we're praying for you. And thank you for letting God use you.
Thank you, Brian. Wish you all the best.
Thank you. You too.